Pleasure. So we are. We're recording. Right. So,
Okay. Hello, everybody. Come, take a seat. I'm going to
look, you say it's a
yeah, you can take the seat right in the front, in the middle.
You're so getting picked on.
So hello. I'm so excited. This is like my first, one of my first domestic trips since COVID, which is cool. Yeah. So today, what are we going to talk about? I'll just quickly tell you who I am. We're going to talk about why should you care about security. I know this sounds stupid. I would hope everybody. I don't really need to explain to you why you should care about security, but I'm going to give you some fun and scary facts that you can use to possibly convince other people why they should care about security. We're going to talk about some quick security wins, kind of across what you should care about if you're building things on Azure, like identity, connectivity, encryption, logging, monitoring, posture management, DevSecOps, and then we'll do Q&A, and we'll just see how long I can rant about various things for, because I do love a bit of ranting about security. But first, who am I? Well, as you know, I am a senior cloud security advocate at Microsoft. This is a relatively new job. We've had cloud advocates for ages, but we haven't had security advocates. That's a relatively new team, so that's cool. I have been in security for ages. I've worked for Microsoft for the last 4 years or so. Before I did advocacy as my actual job, I still do a lot of just general security talk, community things. I've been to B-sides of Perth, a lot of the B-sides over here. I've been to a lot of the community events, etc., and I've done that around the world as best I can. COVID notwithstanding. I wrote some MS Press books. The new one, I wrote the SC200 exam guide, which is the security operations analyst. I also just finished writing the SC100, which is the security architect. That is coming out any day now, I believe. One of my co-authors got his author's copies in the post. Have I had mine? No, so sorry. I might have had freebies, but I do not. Apologies. I'm the co-host of the Azure Security Podcast. It's basically me and 3 other Microsoft people. It's not like an officially endorsed Microsoft thing, but we basically just invite our cool Microsoft security friends on to come and talk security, and we just say we're all nerds with microphones. We basically are. It's amazing the beginning though, where we had no equipment and nothing specialized, to now it's relatively slick. So
Are you the one who says Sentinel is my baby?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is my baby. It still is, although now I've changed to this role. I don't just do Sentinel. For reference, Sentinel is my before this role in Microsoft, I was part of the Sentinel product group in Redmond, and so I worked on Sentinel 24/7, so I know it quite well. And then I came back to Australia and changed jobs. I'm definitely a crazy dog woman. I have a billion stickers, which you can come and help yourself with. I haven't got as many just security ones. They're mostly dogs at the moment, but whatever. My dogs are cute, so it's fine. Well, if we were in Melbourne, I would have brought them into the office, but I would have brought them here actually, but apparently it's quite expensive to move dogs, and they probably wouldn't have enjoyed being in the cargo hold. So, well, they've done it before, but probably not something you want to do with them regularly. Anyway, so let's not talk about me and my dogs, because that could fill a talk, and no one's going to enjoy a user group about Sarah's dogs. Why should you care about security? Look, here's some research which I love. Some of you may have seen it before if you've seen Microsoft security presentations, but I love to bring this slide up. Now I'm going to put the whole thing on, because this is about attack services and actually how cheap they are to run. This is US dollars. This research comes from Microsoft security teams. We have a lot of security research teams, not just engineering who build things. We have all these research teams as well, and there's quite a few of them. And this is the sort of price for things. So we talk a lot about O days, 0 days, the attacks that have no patching or mitigation. People who don't work in security so much, but know a bit, really worry about O days or 0 days. Now, if you look though, and you should be worried about them, no doubt, but if you see the amount of money it costs to develop or discover a 0 day goes from about $5,000 to 350,000. It's very expensive. To research and find a zero-day vulnerability, you need a lot of specialized people, you need a lot of time and resources, and most bad actors out on the internet don't actually have that. The majority of zero days, not hard and fast, but you often see them coming from state-sponsored actors because they have a lot more resources. Your standard criminals probably aren't going to use a zero-day. Ransomware, I'm sure we all know what that is. If you go on the dark web, or, well, no, it's not Silk Road anymore, whatever you dodgy marketplaces there are nowadays, it's $66 roughly to buy some ransomware. Or, and this is strange, or you can go online to dodgy places and you can commission somebody to ransomware someone or something for you. And then when your victim pays up, they will take 30% of the profit. They click the ticket. So it's effectively ransomware as a service.
Right.
Which is very, yeah. And that's $66 to just buy it and do it yourself. Not expensive. Really, really easy to go and get this stuff. Spear phishing, which, as if you're not familiar with the phrase spear phishing, that is sort of more directed phishing. So I used to work at a bank. We had a case where a customer, these people went online, used LinkedIn, social media to find out about the chief financial officer. Oh, they found out who the chief financial officer was. They also found out who the CEO was. And as I said, this is quite a small business. Basically, they spoofed an email from the CEO to the CFO saying, hey, this bill's late, you have to pay it. And they were like, can I just call you and talk to you about this? And then they said, no, I'm at my kid's soccer game, I'm busy, just send the money. And they knew all of this from social media, so it sounded legit. The financial person sent the money, it was quite a lot, to some rogue bank account. You know, this stuff happens, it really does, and people are getting better at it as well. Compromised accounts, as we know, things get leaked, and I love it. We're doing this in person, so it's awesome. Hands up who uses the same username and password combination somewhere in their life. Come on, confess your sins.
I don't.
Those of you who haven't got your hands up, I don't believe you. So, as we know, but I can't stress this enough, like, if you use the same email or username and password combination, and it gets leaked in one place, it can be reused somewhere else. And you can buy these dumps for like, yeah, $150. Does everybody know Have I Been Pwned? The website? Yeah, I'm going to say I'm pretty sure you do. Has everyone put their emails into that? And been not happy, not super happy? Yeah, exactly. If you ever do security awareness training in your organization, if you do campaigns, some organizations do, use that website and have people come and put their emails in, because it really scares people, which is a good thing. I know that my mum got freaked out with the compromised account thing. Has anyone had the email, the spam email saying, hello, blah, I know that your email is this and your password is blah, which has obviously come from a dump. I used it to hack your computer, and I've been watching what you've been doing in the evening. And I have to say, you are naughty. I'll let you guess what happens next, okay? I have received this email, and I just laughed because I was like, well, all I do is sit with my $2 or whatever. But my mom got it, and she was like just more confused than anything, because she was like, oh, that was my password, but it's not my password anymore. And I was like, it's fine, Mom, it came from a dump. You can ignore it. It's just spam. But it's smart spam. But I've heard, really sadly, there have been people who have freaked out, because what they say is, I took a secret recording of you doing adult things, and I'm going to send it to all your friends and family if you don't pay me some money into this Bitcoin wallet, which is horrible. I mean, if you know it's fake, you can just laugh. But, you know, it works. That's the reason these people send these things. And I've heard some awful stories about people sending the money or not understanding how to send the money, you know, having to sit their family down and cry. And it's horrible. Anyway. So, yeah, don't do this, because people do horrible things like that. Obviously, compromised machines, we can do lots of interesting things with those. And now I've got to talk about DDoS. I know, anybody not know what DDoS is? Yeah, cool. So I have a friend who used to work for the New Zealand CERT, so the Cyber Emergency Response Team there. And that's the, and Australia has equivalent as well. And what they do is they're like the public cyber response team. If you have a cyber concern and you're just a normal member of the public, you can call them and they can give you advice. Anyone want to guess what like the most, apparently it used to be, I don't know if it still is, what the most frequent call they got about was? It's DDoS, of course, but like any specific type of DDoS? Be an everyday person?
Scan a list of files.
No. It was teenagers DDoSing each other to stop them playing games like Fortnite so they could win. So you could go onto, you can find websites where you can pay $1 or $2, so very affordable, and then you can DDoS your rival, your Fortnite rival, so their connection sort of snarls up, stops, so you can win. Okay?
Genius.
Okay, yeah, okay, like enterprising, sure, but this is, but like, if our teenagers and sort of young adults can get these sort of attack services that easily, think about someone who actually means business can do. So, you know, just to give you like a nice kind of look around what is actually out there. And the other thing to mention about this is none of this is new. Most of this stuff can be prevented, aside from the 0 days, most of this stuff can be prevented, and I know it's boring, but with good security hygiene, okay? Like, this is, I don't know if anybody, does anyone read the Microsoft Digital Defense Report? Anyone heard of it?
Every day.
Every day,
Yeah.
good, you should. I do too. Like, so every year, sort of about November time, you can look it up if you just Google, if you just Bing Microsoft Digital Defense Report. We publish it once a year, and it's like it's a really interesting read. It just talks about all the things that our security research teams see. So it goes from like common attacks to state-sponsored stuff, different APTs. It's really interesting. But time and time again, a variation of this is in the Digital Defense Report. And I know it's not sexy, and I know it's not very exciting, and it's not spangly, and it doesn't have bells and whistles on it, but pretty much most attacks would be prevented by really good basic security hygiene, like principle of least privilege, which has been around since forever, turning on MFA, patching, you know, things like this. And I know it's not super, super sexy, and I think the challenge we have is that this is almost a harder sell because there's nothing super cool about it. But all the research shows, everything shows that like just doing your hygiene will protect against the vast majority of things out there. And it's things people got wrong. Does everyone remember WannaCry back in 2017? Yeah. Anyone have a bad day or a bad weekend because it sort of happened on a Friday, Saturday? I did. And WannaCry, for those of you who may not have been into the weeds, WannaCry was a 0 day that was patched because it was a Microsoft vulnerability. We had issued a patch, but most people had not applied the patch, and that was the problem. So it wasn't even technically a 0 day when it really blew up and went all around the world. The patch had been released a couple of months beforehand, but the vast majority of organizations, sadly, did not have good regular patching. Well, the ones that were affected did not have good regular patching schedules, so that patch had not been applied. So when WannaCry was discovered, this vulnerability, and started to be exploited by, you know, all these groups out there, it just went whoosh through the world, as probably most of you remember. So that's the thing. Some people got saved just by good luck. I don't know if anyone remembered one of the shipping companies that had, I think this was WannaCry, maybe not. There's a good story of, it's amazing the good luck that comes into security as well. There was one of the big shipping companies had their entire directory taken out, completely taken out by an attack, and all their domain controllers gone. But they just so happened to have a domain controller somewhere in Africa, and they'd had a power cut. So the domain controller was offline. So when this attack went through their system, they actually managed, everything was destroyed, but they managed to restore it from this one domain controller that just happened to be offline because it was a power cut in Africa, which is just luck. Look, Google it. It's a public story. What?
It was, I think, in Sweden, wasn't it?
Maersk.
It was Maersk,
Maersk,
wasn't it? It was Maersk. I have to say, it was one of the shipping companies.
Yeah.
It's not a super secret story, but like that, and sometimes you do get good luck. I can tell you, there are companies I knew when WannaCry happened. I know there are companies that literally the only reason they didn't get pranged by it was because they happened to have one firewall that was well configured, not the fact they were patched. And you need, you've probably heard the phrase defense in depth. You need to have multiple layers that are working to hope that one of those layers will stop things. So, we're not. I think the difficult thing, the challenge we have around a lot of security is a lot of the time, no matter what anyone tells you, is no matter what a vendor will try and sell you, is that it's actually, we're telling you the same things again and again and again. It's just that people don't do them or it's too hard to do them. So I'm basically going to preach the same to you. But here's an interesting one. Has anyone heard of the Dart team here? Apart from the Microsoft people. So Dart is our detection and response team. They are incident responders. We also call them the team in Microsoft that you never want to meet, because if you get, they're lovely, but like if you meet them, you're having a bad day, because what they do is.
We actually now have a member of it in Perth.
No, I know we do. I know there is one Dart member. It's a worldwide team.
He's coming tomorrow night.
Yeah, yes he is. I know he is. So we do have one guy in Perth now. They're a worldwide team. And if your company gets owned, which obviously we hope they don't, but as part of your support contract, you can call Dart, and they're pretty much like Avengers Assemble. They will get a team together, and they sort of will sort of go into your organization and help you. Because of course, if you have been badly breached, it's quite a specialized thing to get them out. And so we do have people that can do that. But this is from our ransomware response engagements. So these are, because ransomware I think is pretty much the most common thing they go to in terms of having to help customers recover. So you can see here like what the reason was. So number one there is insufficient privilege access and lateral movement controls, which means people had too much access on accounts that they didn't need, and there wasn't sufficient segmentation. So as soon as they were in, they could move laterally throughout the environment easily. Obviously the other top two there, but limited adoption of modern security frameworks. And insecure configuration of identity provider. That doesn't surprise me either. Because we do say now that identity, if you could pick one thing, go and do your identity correctly, because we can't do that traditional security. We can't do that. Hello.
Sarah, very good question from my friend here. We play over to distribute today? Others?
There's nothing super secret in this. Yeah.
I mean, it's been recorded, right? So
Yeah, when you're like, no, there's nothing super secret in this. It's fine.
you mean apart from all those NDA slides at the end?
Yeah, apart from those NDA slides at the end. Yeah, they're apart from those ones.
It's security through obscurity.
Oh yeah, because that works. Yeah, security through obscurity. Yeah, everyone knows that works fine. But we do say that if you're going to look at one thing, there's lots of things you should look at. But if you really, everyone is resource constrained, especially at the moment. Look at your identity, because we're not doing that castle and moat sort of thing that we used to do. We'd be like, let's have 10 firewalls around our data center, and then we'll be fine, and we'll break the traffic 10 times to inspect it, and we'll be completely fine. Because nowadays, you might have some on-prem, you'll have some cloud, you might have another cloud, I don't judge you, and you can't put firewalls and just network controls around all of this. The only way to do security, our primary perimeter now has to be identity. It can't be networks. And still, even now, I talk to people like, well, I've got a firewall. And you're like, cool, but the firewall can only look at things that pass through it, and not everything passes through it. So I think there's still a shift as well that not everyone appreciates that identity is the way we need to go as our number one thing. I'm not saying you don't need network controls, by the way. I'm just saying I am an ex Cisco engineer. I have an expired CCNA and CCNP, like all good IT professionals do. But, you know, and you do still need those things, but that can't be your primary control anymore. And I still, time and time again, have that discussion. So, yeah, now, Sarah's run over about things like that, but let's talk about, because I like sessions to be as practical as we can, things that you can do. And also, we know at the moment, everyone's buzzword is do, let me get this right, do more with less. Okay, I keep saying it the wrong way around, and it doesn't really have the same effect when you say that. Do less with more. Yeah, honestly, I keep saying it. I don't know why, it just stuck in my head. Let's talk about some identity things you can do if you're building on Azure. Because some of these, I hope you're already doing them. They may seem sort of very basic, but again, not everyone does them. So, you know, storing your user identities in Azure AD. Do not use random little identity stores, and do not let devs do random little identity stores. Because I had a conversation with someone who really should have known better, literally a month ago, being like, oh, I don't want my app to, I don't think my app can talk to Azure AD. And I was like, pretty sure it can. And I was like, well, what language is it? And they're like, oh, Python. And I was like, and they're like, oh, I don't think it can. And I was like, have you tried? And they're like, no. And for those of you fully uninitiated, as we know, on-prem AD used to not play nice with anything. In fact, it still doesn't play nice with a lot of things, because on-prem AD wanted to talk Microsoft proprietary languages and nothing else, which is why a lot of people would not try and integrate to it. Although we call Azure AD, probably more for familiarity, if you look under the hood, the technology is totally different. It only talks in modern authentication protocols that everybody uses. So the chances of you not being able to integrate to Azure AD are extremely low. So therefore, you have no excuse. Yes.
So you're saying I shouldn't use the ASP.NET identity provider against SQL Server with passwords and plain text?
No, I would not recommend that. Yeah, how are you meant to email them? Like, you know,
Really, technology moved on.
yeah, but I think this one, honestly, I think still the problem is old school on-prem AD or ADFS, whatever you want to call it, still there's a lingering hangover. People like AD talks to nothing. AD only talks to Microsoft. No, it doesn't. Please put it in all the things. And then you've just got one identity store to protect as well. And I know there are some people like, well, yeah, but then if we get breached, well, oh my God, like, you know, it's going to get everything. But the idea is that you concentrate your resources on doing lots of protection of one set of identities. Much easier than trying to do multiple, I can assure you. Anyone know conditional access? Anyone experienced it?
I have a question on it as well, because my Twitter feed is full of it at the moment, showing all these memes of like gates where hands go through it and just open the door from the other side. So
For conditional, wait, I haven't seen
yeah,
this Twitter
so
meme.
I mean, it
And
seems
it's
to
Azure
be
AD conditional
yeah,
access.
taking
Why-
off on Twitter at the moment.
Okay,
I'll
well-
find the
You need to find them and like
Yeah,
tweet
yeah.
them to me. So conditional access, basically, I love conditional access. Does everyone remember when you logged in incorrectly like 3 times and it would block you out or whatever? And then you would be very angry and you have to call the help desk and blah, 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 blah. So Azure AD conditional access is supposed to be like an evolution that makes it smarter. Effectively, what it does, for those of you who don't know, it looks at the conditions of your login. So conditions can be lots of things. So it can be where you are, the device, or where you appear to be. I know VPNs. Where you appear to be, the machine you're using, what resource you're trying to access. And there's a lot of things it looks at. And then depending on your normal patterns of behavior, it will rank your login as high, medium, low. And then you, as an organization, can configure policies to say, if this is a high-risk login, block them. Now, you might not want to do that. That might be because it's going to piss people off. But, or you might say, I want them to re-authenticate completely with MFA, etc. And again, what you want to configure in those different policies will depend on your organization and kind of what you want to do. But what it means is it's quite smart. So we use it internally. All the Microsoft security products, I'm sure if you've ever been to a Microsoft security talk, you'll know that we use all the things internally. So I can usually give you a real life example of this. I was in holiday in Nepal because obviously, and I logged into my work laptop when I was there because obviously, and I do a lot of travel, and that was the first time there. It was like, nah, you shouldn't be in Nepal, and it made me re-authenticate the whole thing because it was like, you shouldn't be there. And I don't know if it was trying to tell me I should be on holiday, but anyway, you know, we use it internally. It's really smart, so it's not as straightforward as just saying, if you do 3 incorrect logins, we will block you, because, you know, it's not particularly smart. Conditional access, really cool. I think it doesn't matter what Azure AD you're buying, it comes with it, so use it, because you should. I mean, please don't make me explain this one, but, right, anybody here not using MFA in their org?
Not on Microsoft, but on all of the lovely services that will only offer MFA if you're on an enterprise plan.
Ooh, spicy. Huh.
Yeah.
I thought we offered it to everyone for free.
Oh, no, so for Microsoft, it's fine.
Yeah.
But on all of the other lovely software services that I have accounts for.
Do you mean non-Microsoft software services?
Non-Microsoft software services. Yeah.
Well, do you know, well, actually,
They also don't offer SSO, so I couldn't use my
so you couldn't, yeah.
use my secure Microsoft account because that is also an enterprise feature.
Well, here at Microsoft, we would not. You may have noticed, actually, this is a change since I've been at Microsoft. We now, because I was just about to say, how is it Microsoft? We don't charge for MFA use. We used to charge for it separately back in the day. We don't, because it was considered so critical and so important to enable customers to use it that it seemed almost wrong to like charge for it, which is why we removed the charge. I mean, obviously, if you integrate as much as you can to Azure AD, the idea is then you use our MFA. I'm sure there are exceptions out there. You know, there always will be, but please use MFA. It stops so many things like you just would not believe. I have been having some dodgy MFA alerts coming into my phone. Someone in Virginia keeps trying to log into my account last week, and they're like, "Is this your login?" No. Anyway, I know it happened a few times and it will have gone and been dealt with, but you know, it's important. Also, if you have any web applications and you've got Azure AD, did you know you can actually use an application proxy and it will proxy up for Azure AD, and then you can use some of the cool features.
I've got a question to be asked.
Go. You can try me though.
What happens if, say, you're actually signing into MFA
Mhm.
and then you accidentally accept one and then you realize it was someone else's request? What do you do in that?
You cannot do that anymore,
Oh, okay.
and I'll tell you why. So you used to be able to.
Isn't that in a month or two?
Hmm?
Isn't this in a month or two that changes?
Oh, maybe it hasn't changed yet.
Yeah,
It's
I think
coming
it's
really
changing.
soon. Yeah. So the reason you won't be able to do that at all soon is when you log in, it also says, tell me what the number is, and it will give you 3 options. And the number is on the login screen. So someone, and so you can't just blindly accept yes anymore. And the reason we put that feature in is for exactly that reason, because if you, Lisa, if you're half awake and you're just like, yeah, okay. Now you have to say yes, and it's also, if you're logging in front of you, it's got a number, and the app will present you with 3 different number options, and you have to click the right one. Now, yes, of course, theoretically, you could still accidentally click the wrong one, but the idea is behind that number prompt is that it makes your brain engage and be like, hang on a second, this isn't me. So, so at the moment, it's not compulsory. Your administrator has to turn it on or off, but in a couple of months' time, it will be there and you will not be able to turn it off. So consider it important because people do make mistakes. People just go, right? Yeah.
Can you still just do like fingerprint on your phone and not have to do the number check?
No, yes, you can until a couple of months' time, and you will have to do the number prompt. Because again, what people do, it doesn't matter how you get into your phone, but you could be like, okay, yeah, it's me, and then you're like, oh shit, it's not me. Like, and we've had enough feedback from customers and concerns, and because identity is the main way of getting into things and attacks, we need to like put another step in to stop people doing that. I mean, if it's not you, you just hit no, done. But it will give you, it's not that you have to type, it's very frictionless. I realize it's one more click of the screen, but I would say it is pretty frictionless, and it really massively reduces the number of accidental yeses when it wasn't actually you. I support turning it on, and I support compulsory numbers. What's the name of it? I forgot it's got a proper name.
Number matching.
Number matching, there you go. I'm like, just numbers? Like,
It's a 2-digit number, not a 6-digit number like.
yeah, it is a 2-digit number. I mean, it's not, you don't have to sit there like, yeah.
I've had it happen for a couple of other accounts where like, Google does that for their confirms as well. And
Yeah.
it's not, it's literally like, the number is 58, press 58 on your phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really actually increasing the number of clicks. It just requires you to engage
Just
your
instead
brain.
of saying, yes, it's me, it's, this is the number.
Yeah, this is the number that I see on the screen because it is me logging in.
You can also make it more difficult and have them type the number in, though. So that's what I get on my Microsoft account.
Don't do that.
I'm easy. I think it's, like I said, it's just about engaging brains to think about what they're doing rather than muscle memory and just going, yes, that's fine, yeah, that's fine. Obviously, you can't do absolutely everything in Azure AD for apps. You know, use Key Vault to store and protect your certificates, your keys, your other secrets. But having said that, again, I had a conversation with someone. They were like, yeah, I mean, my application needs to talk to this database. I'm just going to put a string in Key Vault. And I'm like, no. Do you remember that there are still circumstances where Key Vault is a thing? Please look at managed identities in Azure AD, at least for Azure services. They are a much nicer way and much more easier to protect way than just shoving a string in Key Vault to actually manage these things. I'm not saying you can't not use Key Vault, but please have a look at managed identities. They're designed to use for Azure services. You can log into storage accounts, you can log into databases. It's all integrated up into Azure AD. We get nice monitoring out of it. Like, always go manage identities before Key Vault.
It'd just be nice if SQL actually allowed you in Bicep to set the managed identity login.
I know,
Because then
I
you
know.
got to break out your Bicep into PowerShell, back into Bicep. It's
yeah.
like,
I know who you could complain to about that in engineering.
I've got plenty of complaints open in engineering already about
I know specifically the person you could talk
awesome.
about that. And then make sure your certificates have relatively short lives. I saw, this was a redacted slide from a DART investigation, but they had their secrets expiring in like 2,999. And unsurprisingly, one of the reports from that was, please change your expiration dates. I know, I'm not saying they need to be crazy short, but you can't just set them for like 1,000 years. Please don't do this. And of course, really, you should be building in some kind of key rotation as well if the worst happens. But also use Microsoft keys, manage keys. Don't use your own keys. I know we give you the ability to, but strongly, strongly suggest, unless you have, say, a regulatory requirement to hold your own keys, just don't. Just let us do it. Like, we're better at it. Like, we just are. I promise we are. Not even like bragging. It's not even an exciting task to do, managing keys. Like, just let us do it. For connectivity, as I said, I shall not talk about some networking stuff. Who uses jump boxes or bastions, whatever you want to call them? Do you build your own? Who manages them? Do you use Azure Bastion?
Yep.
Nice. Anyone using their own jump box? Is it horrible?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you keep it up to date? Is it monitored?
Sometimes.
So no, that's a no then. Sir, I believe you should read up about Azure Bastion or Azure Jump Box. I call it Azure Jump Box because Bastion is a very US sort of version of it. It's basically a managed jump box, and we update it and keep it nice for you because honestly, I have seen setups where everything looks super secure, but the jump box itself is horrible. The very thing that can access everything is so vulnerable. So don't do that. Let us do it for you. Please. Like, it's actually very nice, Azure Bastion. Then API type stuff. Well, API management. I mean, this doesn't strictly ever put Microsoft Collateral as a security tool, but I think it should come under it, is API management. So it will put lots of nice, it's not just a security tool, but it allows you to do caching and throttling and authentication in front of an API. So, of course, authentication, authorization, obviously is security, but of course your throttling, caching is more performance, but throttling also can be helpful if someone may be trying to do some kind of DDoS stuff. Protect your APIs. We know APIs can cause trouble, unsecured APIs. Yeah. I think all of us probably know about some companies that have API problems, maybe in the last couple of months. So definitely have a look at that. Also, you can also require people to have subscriptions, like create a subscription before they can use the API. Again, just not putting it out on the internet for the world to have a go at. And then finally, again, another one that's not strictly a security tool, but I think it is in a more traditional theoretical sense, a load balancer. So of course, load balancers increase your availability, make things nice and available. Everyone familiar with the security triad, CIA? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. So anything around availability, which we often forget about, is to do with security as well. So use the things. Oh, here's a nice picture, because I love it, of talking about all our network things. I just like this picture because it actually puts them in quite a nice way. So we have our application protection stuff here. So unsurprisingly, DDoS, WAF, firewall. Then we have the tools and networks that are more for segmentation, for actually chopping things up. I'm not going to use the word zero trust because it's a little bit buzzwordy. We're getting much better, and I think there's actually some really good theory coming behind it rather than it just being a buzzword now. But of course, segmentation is a really big part of zero trust, making sure things at a network level can't access other things. So there we have our NSGs, our service endpoints, and then on the end, we've got our security appliances. So that's if you want to bring in your own firewall, like an ASA, a Palo Alto, etc. Do bear in mind that if you use those rather than the inbuilt Azure services, this isn't me getting into which one's better, which one's worse, but it will change your architecture. It does change up your architecture because it sits, it's running on top of a VM, the appliance, and it just changes up the way you need to do things. Like I said, I'm not getting into which one's better or worse. As long as you're using a capability, the capability of layer 3, layer 4 protection and layer 7, I don't mind how you do it. Whichever one you're most comfortable with. And then encryption. So this is one of my favorite things. It literally goes, and I just realized that's an old name because we never change names, as you know. This is a really nice sort of through the layers of the OSI model of how we do different bits of encryption. So of course, if we start at sort of the data at the top, we can encrypt things. Anyone using Purview? Anyone have a go with it? You like it? What are you using it for? Like labeling, e-discovery?
Data governance.
Yeah. Do you put policies in to like enforce it from a data security? Sorry, sometimes data governance is that, depends. People have different definitions. Do you use it to like stop people pushing things out to places they shouldn't be?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, honestly, Purview is good. It's coming soon. It's going to be the new thing, I'm telling you. Like, Purview is going to be cool because I think in security, we talk a lot about how to secure our infrastructure, how to secure the architecture, but we don't talk enough about how to secure our data. This is another talk, which I'm going to stop in a minute because that's another thing. But at the end of the day, most attackers are trying to get data, whether they want to sell it, whether they want to sell it, or they want to hold you to ransom with it, whatever it is, or whether it's for state-sponsored actors for spying or whatever. Really, all the other attacks are to get at data, but a lot of the time we actually rely on the lower layers to do the security, when another part of what we should be doing is labeling data and putting protection policies against it. Purview is really cool. It will like automatically discover data, tag it. This is very simplistic. This is another talk. Anyway, there's a lovely gentleman called Bo who works in this office who can talk to you about Purview all day long. And he knows it much better than me, if you're interested. Has Bo done a talk here? I feel like he probably
No,
has.
you should do that, shouldn't you?
You should tell Bo to come talk about Purview.
I'll put it on
Basically, it looks for patterns. So it will look for like credit card numbers, tax numbers, whatever. And if it sees data that looks like that, it'll automatically tag it, because the last thing anyone wants to do is manually tag data. It's not realistic. And then you can say, if this is like credit card data, it can't go here. It can't be emailed here. We use the tool again within Microsoft. I've been very frustrated sometimes because sometimes I've decided I need to send a document somewhere, and the label will not let me do it. And unlike old school data loss prevention, does anyone remember network-based DLP where you could basically zip the file up and then it could go past because it couldn't
Just put a
read
password
it?
on it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I remember this because I did it too. No, I have tried with Purview, right? It is smart. I have not found a way to get around that labeling and that policy. It is really clever, and there are so many different conditions. It's far more modern. You can't zip it up and email it out. It's like, no. You can't print it, you can't do this, you can't open it on certain network locations. It's crazy, the number of options. So I'm going to shut up about Purview, but go look at it. Get Bo to come talk about it. It's cool. So that's your data bit that everyone forgets about, which I think is going to be one of the next big things in security is actually doing this data protection properly, because we don't talk about it enough. Then application layers, service, virtual machine. Look, probably none of these come as any surprise. Of course, sort of at the app layer, depending on what you're doing, you can BYO your encryption. I mean, I know application layer encryption, depending on what you're using, can be bit of hit and miss, bit of a mixed bag. I think it's definitely running better than it used to. Of course, at SQL and backup loader, we can of course encrypt all of that. Sometimes we do it, sometimes you can do it. Depends. Again, lots of different variants here, but it's worth sort of being aware of all these things. And you shouldn't just be doing one of them, by the way. Like, really, defense in depth, multiple layers of different protection. I know that once I had a heated argument with a gentleman who insisted that having 3 firewalls was indeed defense in depth. And I was like, no, it is not, because you have 3 layers of exactly the same thing. Like, defense in depth is multiple layers of different types of security controls. And although this is all encryption, it is encryption at different layers. But also, don't just rely on encryption, do other things too. And then we're going to talk about my baby, which is logging and monitoring. Because logging is really important. Turn on logging for everything. Turn it on. Turn all the things on. Like, we have so many logs. And collect them into a central store, please. Like, do not put them in random places that no one can get to them. Sometimes I know there is a requirement. It might be like regulatory that you have to keep logs in certain jurisdictions, like certain geographies. I know that can sometimes be a thing. And sometimes I often hear as well, people worried about PII, and they go, oh, well, it's PII, GDPR, PII, blah, blah, blah. No, we can't do anything with that. And it's like, in your actual just system logs, that there should be no PII, okay, right? A login, just a user logging into AD or into an application, that sort of line is not PII, okay? If you've got a weird application that is in its system logs collecting PII, you need to go look at that application and see why it has. I have had this conversation more than once, I can promise you. No application should log anything that is truly counted as PII into it. So I don't buy that one. But sometimes you have to have more than one store, but you should have as few as possible. And then, has anyone heard the phrase, I used to have a sticker and I need to get it reprinted? Collection is not detection, okay? Just because you collect the logs, if you're not doing anything with them, that's not actually that useful. So I know some people do it for box ticking exercise for some kind of security standard or policy, but to be honest with you, there is no point collecting logs if you're not doing anything with them. Obviously in Microsoft land, we're talking about log analytics and Sentinel. Use the out-of-the-box stuff, especially when, you may not have a dedicated SOC. You have to be a certain size of operation before running your own SOC is actually worthwhile. I know there's outsourced SOCs as well, service providers that do it, but if you're doing it yourself and you don't have a ton of people, use all the out-of-the-box stuff. Like, we pay a lot of people who are quite smart to write a lot of rules. Now, they're not going to cover you for 100%, but you might as well use them. And then as you learn your environment better, you can tweak them or you can write brand new ones. I did once come across a customer who was so determined not to use anything out of the box. I'm like, well, it just doesn't work for us. And I was like, well, you could turn it on and like monitor it for a week and see. And they're like, no, it just doesn't work for us. And I'm like, okay. And automate as much as you can. Like I said, do more with less. I think the way I had this conversation earlier today. I think the way the landscape is, there's many the economy is slowing down, the worldwide economy is slowing down. A lot of organizations, although there's still a skill shortage in tech and in particular security, people aren't hiring as much. There's a lot of organizations with hiring freezes. Basically people will be being asked to do more and with less headcount or not increasing headcount. So I think this automation piece, we've been talking about it for a long time in security because just stuff doesn't scale. You can't employ enough humans. Do you know how many, anyone want to guess how many signals, and by signals I mean like bits of security telemetry, Microsoft gets a day, roughly, that we've estimated?
20 billion?
8 trillion. That's across all of our platforms. So think that's like 1 billion Windows devices, that's Azure, that's Xbox, that's Bing, that's Exchange, it's the M365 platform. We get like 8 trillion security signals a day. So that we then, I'm going to use every buzzword going here. We use AI, we use machine learning models and automation to normalize all of that stuff and turn it into useful stuff to go in products and stuff like that. But we could never employ enough people to do this stuff manually. And I realize like Microsoft is a huge global organization with like 100,000 employees, but the same is true for any organization. Even if you've got just like one person doing security or just a handful of people, even for what you get, you need to automate. You can't, I think basically no one can employ enough people to do this stuff manually, so you must automate. We've been saying this for a long time, but I think with what's going on in the world, I think people will be, because you do have to sit down and think about how you want to automate things before you can do it. And I think, I don't want to say yes, it's going to force people to do it, but you know what I mean. I think it will become really, really pressing, which is a good thing, because also in monitoring, automation can get rid of the really boring jobs, like, because monitoring and, anyone who does monitoring and security operations, if you've ever done it, you'll know there are some horribly boring, manual, repetitive things that you do there.
It'd be great if you can move just in Sentinel or Log Analytics to another place. That's probably the biggest challenge.
You mean move from one region to another?
Or not even region, subscription.
You can move subscription. You can't move region. Well, it's extremely difficult. I think you could move subscription.
You can move the workspace if it's not enabled for Sentinel, but once it's enabled, it's not supported.
Yeah. Why would you need to move it though?
So if someone's turned it on and they've started doing things and then they come back and do it properly, it makes it a challenge to try and.
Yeah. There's a number of reasons that's tricky. That's not the first. I've come across that about 3 times, and there are, to my knowledge, no plans to change that because it's to do with the way that Sentinel and Log Analytics is built on the back end means it can't just be shifted. And it's something that comes up occasionally, but not too often. But I realize that if you're in that situation, it's really annoying and painful. There are a couple of tips and tricks that you can do to whip out your Sentinel configuration and then push it back in to make it slightly less painful. And like, if you need help with that, I can tell you who can help you with that. But yeah, you do have to sort of shift the Log Analytics and then sort of redo the Sentinel on top. But there's a couple of ways, like I said, we can drag it out and push it back in again. So, but we kind of hope this stuff doesn't change very much. But it hasn't been such it's still sort of very much an edge case. So I don't think it's going to be prioritized by someone changing that, unfortunately, because it's probably a bit too difficult to change on the back end. But I do know that it's painful. I hear you. I just probably can't do anything. I see you, but I can't do anything about it.
Sorry, Steve.
Yeah. But here's some, well, like I said, go and definitely use inbuilt tools and the out-of-the-box stuff. But here are some scenarios that we do think attempts to access sign into disabled accounts, possibly dodge. New access credential added to an application or a service principal. Now, that is a whole different talk, but don't forget to secure and identities your non-human identities. We talk a lot about people accounts, but we have service accounts, service principals. People forget about keeping an eye on them as well. And there have been a number of attacks, high-profile attacks on those things, so don't forget about them. Authentication attempt from a new country. I mean, if impossible travel does have its challenges, anyone like had a pain with the impossible travel alert. Yeah, I know it has its challenges, but I still think it's a good thing to have in. New inbox rules created to forward things to external domains, not great. Apparently the new thing is also to forward it to the junk, so it's hidden. Multiple failed login attempts, of course, is probably something you need to look at, and files and folders being shared externally. You know, they're just some of the things that that we think are good. But as I said, if you're using, go and look at Sentinel. There's an absolute ton of, there's hundreds of rules in there. So not everything's going to be relevant to everyone because not everybody has the whole the whole Microsoft feature set, but worth looking at. Hello.
With Sentinel, does it have secret detection?
Does it have what? Sorry.
Secret detection.
Secret detection. What do you mean by secret detection?
So a scenario is. You can do the right thing, have key vault references in app settings for a logic app, but when you go use that app setting, if you're pulling a key directly from key vault as a connector in a logic app, it goes, I'm going to secure that and it won't go into log analytics. But if it's from app settings, it goes, no, that's fine, we'll put that into logs. So now you might have a host key or a subscription key for APIM that slips into your logs.
I never. Surely we do not do.
Yeah, I've talked to the Logic App product team. They're like, oh, whoops, we'll look into it. So does Sentinel pick up on, like, do you have known patterns for your own keys and have Sentinel?
You could probably not. That sounds like something we probably wouldn't write a rule for in the box product set, possibly because it would alert more people it's there. But you could write. I'm trying to think.
Run Purview over it.
Purview, Purview, because log analytics is immutable, I don't think Purview can get in and tag it and stuff and do things to it. Yeah. But I'm thinking out loud, you could write a rule, especially if you knew roughly where it landed and what table, it would be pretty easy to write. And you sort of, if you have an example log of where it happened, in the interim, I mean, as a workaround whilst we fix that, you could write transformation rules as it came in. So there's two ways you could do it. You could either write a detection rule that would say, oh look, keys in logs, which is not good. Or depending on the table it came in on, which I can't think off the top of my head, we have a feature in Sentinel that came out about 6 months ago, which is the data transformation rules. So you could theoretically, because can be used for this, you could write a rule that said, if you see something that looks like a key, like again, you'd have to sort of get the format, but if you see something that looks like a key, literally just put X's in or something, like scrub it. Yep. So that's, look up DCR rules, DTR? DTR? The data transformation rules, it comes in a log analytics feature rather than a Sentinel feature, but of course it is a Sentinel feature, because you could actually, if it's a table that's supported, because not quite every table is supported, but nearly all of them are now, you'd be able to write a rule that scrubbed the key before it hit log analytics. It's sort of a workaround for now, because I get it, you don't want keys in the logs.
So it's essentially regexes.
Yeah. It should work. This is me thinking out loud, but theoretically it should work if you got the rule right.
Yeah, like GitHub Advanced Security knows about a lot of Azure keys, but for the ones it doesn't, you have to write a regex, like function out keys it doesn't know about those. So, I think it should be possible to do it that way, and you'd at least get it out of your logs for now. Does that still alert the transformation? Like, can you set the transformations to alert that a key went in there and we did something about it?
What you have to do then, because the transformation rule is like as it hits log analytics, you would exit out or whatever. Then you could write a rule that in Sentinel that said, if you see like XXXXXXX, whatever you decide to set it to, alert me. So you could do both, yeah. You do one in the data transformation and then you do one at the Sentinel level. And then it would tell you saying, FYI, some idiot's done this. Or whatever you want it to say.
Sounds like a fun POC to do.
It actually does. Like, please do it. Tweet me afterwards and tell me if it works. Also, if it doesn't work, I feel like I want to tell my old team about this as well. I wonder if they're aware of that. Anyway, fun times. I feel like it can be fixed as a workaround anyway before we fix it. Posture management. So CSPM is Cloud Security Posture Management. That's tooling that continually assesses security posture. Now, I think this is one of our most underloved products. Ours is called Defender for Cloud, the artist formerly known as Azure Security Center. It's been around a long time. The basic version is free, so you have no excuse not to be using it. Has anyone used it, looked at their secure score?
Yeah.
A couple of people, yes. Like, go look at it. It will tell you, like, if you're doing, like, have you got MFA turned on? Is your machine patched? Did you know that it also now you can do it on-prem and in all the other clouds as well? Google and GCP. Google and GCP, AWS and GCP. It can do it across the whole lot. Because, of course, you know, you need to be looking at everything. There's no point just looking at one bit of your overall environment. And I do think this is something that gets forgotten about, and it's actually pretty important. Oh, here you go. There's all the things that Defender Cloud can have a look at and tell you, like, if you're adhering to best practice. There's a lot of things there. And as you can see, it can also do it in parts of AWS, GCP, and on-prem. So you can actually get that view across the whole place. Now, as someone who used to work for a Big Four, who used to do security audits manually, I can tell you, this is like, I think this is why I have a real soft spot for it. This makes my job much easier. Well, I don't do that job anymore, but if I did, you know, this gets rid of a lot of that because we know that auditing and checking things is really time consuming, and this will just do it for you. And at least on the Azure side of things, it depends what it is, but a lot of it, we can automate the remediation if you want to. It will actually fix it for you. Now, I know not everybody wants to do that because, of course, you know, it can be, you know, you might need to go through change control. Not everyone is comfortable with a tool just doing updates, but you can if you want, or you can schedule it to do things. So if you've never looked at this, the basic version is free, and you really should. Oh, and then last but not least, DevSecOps. Who here has tried Defender for DevOps? Do you like it? What's wrong with it?
It's a replica of what you get in GitHub Advanced Security. It's just a dashboard, but it's harder to navigate.
It's in preview.
It is in preview.
Nice start.
It's all right. You can actually tell I've had this conversation more than once in different places. No, I mean, Defender for DevOps is, so the idea is long term, they'll sort of, the idea is that it will sort of complement advanced security, the GitHub Advanced Security. There will be a bit of overlap, but Defender for DevOps is going to do all these things. It is in public preview at the moment, so it is early days. In fact, we encourage you, and I speak on behalf of the Defender for DevOps product group. They want you to go and try it, and there is a form. I know I've put it on LinkedIn before. You can go and tell them what you think about it. Tell them truthfully. They need to know. So, because that's how we do things better. But of course, I think this is another bit of security that you're going to see a lot more talk about. Is that now a lot of organizations are moving to infrastructure as code and doing more DevOpsy stuff. I know it's been around a long time, but I think now we're getting to that tipping point that so many organizations are doing it, but they still haven't looked at the security bit of it. So of course we're getting in there. As you know, when we have the big industry conferences, most of the big providers make announcements. Keep an eye out at RSA in April. You'll see some new things coming in this sort of space as well. That's all I'm allowed to say, but you know, there's going to be some things coming, and Defender for DevOps is a baby thing at the moment. It only came out like just before Christmas, so be gentle with it, but please also give it your feedback, and you'll see, as all brand new products do, they get a lot more features pretty quickly. I remember my baby Sentinel 4 years ago, and I was like having to talk to people, like putting it up against Splunk, and 4 years ago, that was not a very fair comparison, let me tell you, when it was in public previews. Whereas Sentinel now does all the things. I love it. So as you see, the idea is it sits in Defender for Cloud as a kind of thing, but it also complements it. The idea is it can do all these things like code to cloud, infrastructure as code, DevOps. As I said, it is in preview, but go and have a look at it because we want to make people aware of it, but also get your honest feedback about, you know, where you think it's missing things. I know at the moment it will only support repos from GitHub and Azure DevOps, but of course that support will grow as we come out of preview. So if you're not doing any kind of protection in the DevOps space, or you haven't got any tooling, it's worth going to have a play around with. And then last but not least, because I've talked far too much, go do's. I will leave it at these 4. Go read the Microsoft Digital Defense Report. It's cool. If you also, we have a developer's guide to Azure. It's been around a while, but I think it's been updated recently. Chapter 6 is all about security. We've also got something called the Cloud Adoption Security Review Tool. That's pretty new. Go and that will actually tell you where it thinks you are in terms of it will judge you basically. And there you go. The Defender for DevOps public preview feedback. Go forth and tell them what you think of it, so we can make it better. So yeah, and that is everything I have to talk to you about / rant. But I know we've been answering questions as we go along, but did anyone have any more questions? You can hit me with anything security and I will try. I like to think if I don't know, I probably know someone who knows, and I'm happy to follow up and try and find out for you, because that's kind of my thing. So, hello.
So one of the earlier slides around policies for Key Vault, and maybe having a 1 or a 2 year policy on those secrets. Have you come across organizations that have formed strategies around key renewal? So if you're getting subscription keys from APIs or function app host keys or whatever else, how do they manage the renewal and then the distribution to multiple controls?
Yeah, I have seen organizations do it. To be honest with you, a lot of them, it's not super clean. I think very few, there's a certain level of maturity before organizations sit down and are like, hey, we need to think about this. It's usually quite low down, and it's sort of usually done in quite a fragmented way. But I have seen, usually as part of a cloud transformation, but usually when they've got like real specialists come in and help them, they'll be like, no, you actually need to sit down, think about key rotation, and have all this automation put in to do it. But sadly, it's not as prevalent as we would like, because it tends to be quite a fragmented thing. I have seen a couple of organizations as well that actually sit down and put in policy, you'll rank an application, sort of critical, high, medium, low or something, and based on whatever that application is and its related keys, that depends how long the expiration could be. But to be honest with you, I don't see a great number of examples of people doing it well yet. It can be done, but I think largely it's just getting the right people to sit down and make a policy. Like, the first one is getting people to sit down and write policy about how long they think it should be, because that's going to vary from organization to organization. And then going to like infrastructure people and saying, okay, how can we actually facilitate that renewal thing in a nice and tidy way? I mean, in theory, when people implement into cloud and put things into cloud, theoretically, when you build in cloud, you should be building in as part of your like application and a service plan, how will we rotate keys in an emergency? Because it's actually more likely, well, depending on, if you set your keys for 1,000 years, like you're not going to have to renew them. But if you have an emergency, like you're breached or whatever, or you have some kind of minor breach, you may need to do like, an emergency key rotation, and you should always be building that in at the start. Now, again, lots of people don't. They end up building in a key rotation after something bad has happened. But if you've already built that process, it's usually easy to fit into that, but don't see people do it very well very often, sadly.
Yeah, I'm starting to see organizations do the right thing and the policy in place, but then the application developer comes in and goes, oh, well, I'll make that key 1 year, and it's a 1 year disaster waiting to happen.
I think as well, you're right, and I think there's still, and it's the eternal story of security. Either the policy people, the risk and policy people, and or the security team, whoever's doing that, don't have enough. There's still a disconnect between people building things and people securing things. And we've talked about this to death, and I think I will probably till my dying day. Devs and security, especially now, the more we do this agile thing, have to talk, like communicate more and work closer together. And again, you see varying levels of maturity of it. And it's not that, because there's two problems. Security people have always been traditionally like, oh, devs. They don't know what they're doing, they don't understand security, and there was traditionally quite an elitist mindset in security. They were like, oh, I know security, you couldn't possibly understand this, I will deal with it, silly rest of IT org. And whereas now, like, it really doesn't help serve as well to be like that, because everyone has to a point, care about security. But I think there's an old school mindset that, like, talking to security and including other parts of the IT org will threaten security specialist jobs. I don't believe it will, because you always need people 100% focused on security, but you need the rest of the IT org, whether they're devs or operations or whatever, that you think about it more too. And where, though, in the times I have seen people have that discussion and talk to developers, have them think about it and do some collaboration, let the devs understand why it's important, usually it goes really well. But there's, like, it's more of a, but for someone who officially works in technical IT, I spend a lot of time talking about people's feelings, and I swear it's more of a mindset change than anything. But different orgs, I would say I've not seen any orgs do it really well, or not across an entire organization. Sometimes you get pockets of it where some teams are working well, but to make that culture change, like literally top to bottom across an org of any size, is real difficult. So I'm going to leave it with the non-committal answer. It's a journey, because it is, but we can all do better. Security can do better, devs can do better, but you're right. Someone just puts a key in there and doesn't tell anyone, because often they don't even think there might be a policy on it, because they're just not in a good dialogue with security, so they wouldn't know. And
they definitely know when they're trying to make it 10-year policy.
Maybe when they're making it 200 years, maybe. Yeah. But
so it's a 10-year policy. You know that's because they intend on leaving.
Oh no, sorry, not a 10-year policy, but it's a 1-year policy, and the dev goes in with the
Try and make it
10 make it 100 years. Yes. And then you have 100 iterations until you get down to the 1 year.
I don't see. Maybe it's just I'm like, every time I've ever had like really good dialogue with devs, I'll tell you a good one I did once. I was working before Microsoft. I was working for I was a consultant, an external consultant for a telco in Australia, and you can pick which one. And they had devs who were they were basically putting old services, they were chopping them up, making them microservices and putting them in cloud. And these devs were, they were only small services, and they were creating design documents, maybe only like a page or two long, and they would show them to the security architects. Now, those security architects were pretty old school security people, like, I will sit on my high horse and just say no because I can. These devs, one document that I checked, and my job as the external consultant was actually to work with devs. I would check their work before it went to security architecture, and they just pushed it back. And one of them once sent me a document, and they were drawing two bits, I can't remember, two things that were talking to each other. They were talking in Telnet. And it was a very old thing, and it couldn't talk in anything but Telnet. It was that old. And what they had written, though, in the design document was that we are using Telnet because it is safe. And I was like, no. Literally what it said. I will never forget this. And I was like, you don't actually think Telnet is safe, do you? And they were like, oh yeah, but it's all internal, it's within. Basically what they meant was it was low risk because they couldn't upgrade it. Like literally this thing was so old that it could not talk in anything but Telnet. I mean, I'm actually amazed they managed to shoehorn it into cloud, but they did, which is probably testament to they were quite good devs, but they couldn't get it to talk to anything else apart from Telnet. But it was all within an NSG. It wasn't exposed externally. None of the constituent parts were exposed externally. So what they were trying to say was it is low risk, but they didn't know the language. And I said, if you send that to security architecture, they will freak out, think that you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and they'll probably say no to everything you do because then they won't trust you. Let's rephrase this and show that you have thought about it and why you're considering the risk is low, blah, blah. Because it's not that they didn't know that sending in clear text is bad, but they just didn't have the phrasing. And I think sometimes it's literally like a language problem as well. Anyway, the good news is, you're glad to know, we changed the phrasing, it did get approved. improved, although they were a bit like, meh, meh, meh. We were like, look, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing we can do to stop it talking in Telnet. So either you don't do this, and like I said, these things, we need to do better. We all need to do better at talking to each other, but security is always hard, and that's why security people are always going to have jobs, I think, because there's so many competing pressures from, like, I think something that security people forget is that security is not the be all and end all. At the end of the day, security is a function that serves a business that's trying to make, an organization that's trying to make money or doing whatever their mission is, and we can't just say no. And so there's always got to be, you're always going to have that balance between functionality and security. And what security's job is to try and make stuff easy for the end user and everybody else so they'll actually do it. You know, make the right thing the easy thing to do. We got a long way to go, but hello.
That leads very well into a question I've been wanting to ask, which is, how do you see security travelling from the perspective of, if I'm a business wanting to connect to another business, it should be pretty easy to sort out the security between the two. Are we ever going to get there? I mean, we're now in the cloud. We're on paths of convergence. We should be able to ultimately reach a point where that's not so hard.
I'm going to throw out my best consulting language for this.
Yeah.
But the challenge that you have there is that all organizations have different security postures and different risk tolerances, and that is why having standardized security is incredibly difficult. However, maybe in things like government, where everyone's bound by exactly the same kind of rules, it's going to be easier. But in commercial, probably government is the one where maybe it's going to be a bit easier to do things like that, theoretically. But I think in other industry verticals, the problem is if it's not highly regulated, it's very much a business call. One business may say, I'm okay with the if someone has a high risk login, yeah, they can log in, just MFA them, and as long as they pass the MFA challenge, they can come in. Another business might be like, fuck no. If it's a high risk login, I'm going to block them, and that's always like a business call, depending on.
I'm cool with the business complexity.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem.
It's just, yeah, you think the business complexity is the main problem?
I do, because the technology is already there. Nowadays, the technology is there. We've got a lot of open standards, and let's face it, no matter what vendor you're on, largely now, all the big main vendors are playing nicely with the open standards for authentication.
But then people put a firewall in between everything because they think they still should firewall off.
That's a different story.
Of course you need a firewall. No, you don't. It's true, and that's also a misunderstanding of like modern security, is that putting a firewall in front of everything does not solve your problems anymore.
But I mean, I suppose that's an example where I see an unnecessary technical complexity making it harder than it should be.
100%.
Yeah, and I'm interested in how fast we're getting away from those problems.
It really depends on kind of the level of maturity in the organization, the kind of people they have. If if they're still sort of relatively low maturity in terms of, they're not sort of modernizing their infrastructure, they'll be further behind. Interestingly, what I see, and this is not scientific, this is Sarah's opinion, is that the organizations that traditionally were very good at doing that waterfall approach, they had stage gates, they had, and there was a security review at every stage, and they had a really well-defined process, are the ones that struggle more to go to the modern infrastructure. Because they had such ingrained processes that worked well, that at the time were considered very mature, are struggling to move to the DevOps agile thing and implementing modern technologies. So I think that's an interesting thing, whereas you see sort of...
It's a new company that just lands on the cloud.
Or if it was born on the cloud, way easier, but also ones that didn't. It was a bit of a wild west back in the day. They found it easier to put things in, but the ones that had those old processes so ingrained are the ones that struggle to modernize, which is ironic because often they're the bigger, more highly regulated organizations that actually have more resource, but often the resource is like, we're doing it like we're doing it. It's cool. It's working for us. But I think it's more about getting people and organizations to agree is more of the challenge than the technology, because I think we have the technology, but not everyone agrees. I mean, even when I was working for a big four, we used to do pen test reports. And I can remember taking a pen test report to more than one customer, it happened more than once, and we'd have rated the vulnerabilities like high, medium, low. And I had literally had conversations with the customer, and they were like, that's not high. Can you put that as medium? And I'm like, no, I don't, because I'm an external consultant and I'm allowed to write what I want. But they didn't want it to say that, of course, because then their boss would be mad or whatever, or they'd have to fix it. But genuinely, there are differences of opinion sometimes. It sometimes sounds crazy, but some people are like, that's not critical, when it's like, I just took over your entire platform. But no, that's not critical, that's not critical. But I think that's the problem, is that even security is still subjective on what is bad and what risks are worth, because we can't get away from risk. There's always risk with everything. Nothing's 100%, but different organizations will have different opinions on what's okay and what's not. And I think that mismatch is the thing that makes it hardest, to be honest with you. So I still think we will still be, for the foreseeable, apart from in organizations like government where they're all following exactly the same set of rules, you'll find that we will still be inviting organizations to come in and look at our stuff. And so they're still subject to our organization's rules rather than maybe sort of just all connecting up, which would be nice.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't expect that everybody's just going to happily connect to each other.
Well, not connect, but maybe data share. I'm not meaning sort of connect your networks and your tenancies, but it's tricky. It's tricky. Basically, none of us trust each other, so
Yeah. So you can
zero trust.
You can pick up the phone and talk to anyone in the world, but you can't do it.
Oh, yeah.
Someone invites you. You have to be, because otherwise you get spammed.
Well,
And even the
or
phone
you
now,
get
no one
spammed.
wants to
You don't want
answer
the
the
Zoom people who just crash a Zoom
That's
meeting,
right.
right? So yeah, come join security. We have all this fun. If you're not a security specialist, come join us. There is a skill shortage. There is lots of work. There will always be lots of work.
I'm going to have to take a certificate though. That's the.
I
do
can-
my CISSP, really.
You can do your SC 900. I did my SC 900 in 3 minutes. That was just me being very ultra alpha female and just wanting to see how quickly I could do the security fundamentals. I did do it in like 3 minutes and I passed. I probably should,
700, 710, or 950.
I don't know. I can't remember what I got. I just know I passed it.
Doesn't matter. Pass is a pass.
Yeah, pass is a pass. I didn't actually know you could get the score until someone told me a couple of years ago. And then I went back through some of them and I was like, oh, that's not as high as I thought I would get. Like,
Gives you the funds. Gives you your funds.
question was wrong. Question was badly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, question was
Badly phrased. Badly phrased. Yeah.
Yeah, badly written.
Ambiguous.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyway, it's nearly 7 o'clock. I don't know how long this user group normally goes for, but thank you for sticking with me. Feel free to come and ask me questions. Steal stickers. Please steal stickers. Because mostly they're dogs, but whatever. Come and get them anyway, because then I know that I spoke to you. And yeah, thanks very much for your attention. I hope that was interesting. And thanks for having me.
Thank you.